6'8" forward from Wichita State, Xavier Mcdaniel.
Call me X, Xavier Mcdaniel. X-Man.
Ask any Celtic fan, and they'll tell you this team can attack any challenger that tries to defy the ghosts of the Boston Garden.
Magic, one-on-one. Ellis now coming over to double, and he caused the turnover, helping with McMillan. It's a 3-on-2. Loop it to McDaniel. Seven-point lead for the Sonics, and the crowd on its feet. Timeout. L.A.
Now, the great thing about this is McMillan reads who's out there on the break with him and knows the abilities of the X-Man.
And there it is again. Nate McMillan. He doesn't have to score to contribute. Cole so far has missed his first four. There's McDaniel going baseline, and the Sonics are showing some athletic skills of their own here.
The Lakers are sleepwalking at this point. You think he wants to make the All-Star team?
Seven to shoot. Nice spin move by Xavier Mcdaniel. Three-on-two. Jackson passing to McDaniel for the jam. We're tied at 8, 7:46.
Cartwright facing up, going in on the left hand. McDaniel comes in, strips the ball. Jackson, it's a 3-on-1. McDaniel with the jam. Really shoot it. McDaniel with the jam. 2 consecutive baskets. McDaniel on the outlet. Tough play.
Xavier Daniel's now hard. Daniel, John Paxton's back. Daniel too big. Here comes Michael Jordan. Slaps him in the face. No foul. The New York fans react to the replay, and here it is. Boom, right there. So tough play. Xavier McDaniel quarter.
McDaniel, yes. The Bulls 23. Bucks for 3. Rebound McDaniel. Yes, and it counts.
Williams, and nowhere near as big or physical as a Cartwright, and Grant much more physical also. The body's coming up with second shots, capitalizing on the opportunities.
At 5, McDaniel spinning Grant. The Knicks 77.
Clock running down, you have to have the ability to put the ball on the floor and create a shot for yourself. Well, X-Man does a pretty good job of creating, splitting 2 defenders, and then converting at the end.
And the rainbow to go. Another big rebound by McDaniel. He'll put it up, and in Xavier McDaniel.
They give him 2 in the ball. Oh, they're going to call it a flagrant foul.
Holding thing about to break something out down there.
Daniel wants to post Pippen.
Turnaround jumper drained by McDaniel. Fouls on Horace Grant, his second. Pippen stepping out for the double team. That leaves McDaniel open. In the corner.
They're running screen.
Ernie Johnson Jr. in our studio.
Scotty's not going to be able to flop. He better stay up on his feet. McDaniel's shooting the jumper well.
But they haven't been able to stop the X-Man. He has 16.
Longer cast is the underdog. Their explosive attack.
Fox steals it. Look up. Nice play by B-Vine. Great Fox almost. Yeah, and he just leans in. It's murder.
Underneath the McDaniel, dishes to Lister for 2. Anticipated, except perhaps the Seattle team. McDaniel turnaround over Kareem.
Boy, he is. They are just playing with supreme confidence, the Sonics.
Sonics, 7 seconds on the clock, and the Lakers really extending their defense. McDaniel hits a long 2-point shot.
Like this.
Chambers hits, though. And now Cooper and McDaniel tangle. Cooper had his problems with...
Players are like elephants. They don't forget. Look at Cooper coming back at him.
You know, the Lakers talked about this. And
Sonics have to play it.
And Cooper and Ellis shove each other.
Position so that they...
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Go School Retro NBA episode 15, where I'm here to talk about none other than X-Men. You guys don't know who Xavier McDaniel is? Stay tuned, because I'm going to teach you all about him. Appreciate you all for coming on. So let's get into the career of Mr. X-Man, Xavier McDaniels. One of my favorite players as a kid growing up, and I learned so much about him throughout my years with my family, friends, and just people around New York that put me on to X-Man. And let me tell you something, if you guys have never seen Xavier McDaniels from his college days at Wichita State all the way to the NBA level with Seattle, the Knicks, Boston Celtics, this guy was a problem. You want to talk about the true enforcer? That's what X-Man is. This guy would crash the boards religiously. He could get in the paint, score, attack the basket, and he was known for intimidating opposing teams' players and getting under their skin. And he demanded a lot of his teammates too. That's the reason why he got into a lot of fights in practice and just had a lot of things going on inside the practice facilities. And he demanded the best, and rightfully so, because you need a guy like Xavier McDaniels on your team. He starts off in Columbia, South Carolina, where he's from, and went to Alma Flora High School, where he would go on to win a state title. And he was actually coveted a recruit and was coveted by Wichita State Shockers, where he would eventually go play alongside Cliff Livingston and future NBA's players Antoine Carr. So those guys, just being under the tutelage of those two guys coming in as a freshman, I'm sure it taught Xavier a lot. He would go on to play for Wichita State. And the Shockers, unfortunately, they were on probation the first 2 years. But the following season, he ended up replacing Cliff Livingston and averaged 18.8 and 14.4 rebounds a game. And that was pretty dope for him coming in and replacing Cliff Livingston, who was actually a good player for them at Wichita State. And the following season, he replaced Antoine Carr when he hit the NBA and put up 20 points per game. X-Man would continue, and he would average 27 points and 14 rebounds a game his senior year. He made All-Conceition's first team and was Missouri Valley Conference MVP. And if you guys don't know, he shaved his head in high school, and he kept that in college and kept that as his demeanor going into the NBA because he used it to intimidate players, opposing players. So I thought that was pretty cool and unique of him because that was basically his signature. If you notice, he had no eyebrows and he used to shave his head. So that was the reasons why he did that. And let me tell you something, man. That dude, he was just a great player, man. I'm talking about his numbers still retired with Wichita State as we speak, and he's inducted into the Hall of Fame with them. And he was just so good, man. There's so many things that you just loved about Xavier McDaniel. And he goes on to be picked in the first round, pick number 4, picked by the Seattle SuperSonics, where he starts his career. Before he even went to the NBA, he was a 2-time rebounding leader in 2 seasons, 2-time MVC leader, and he actually won the scoring and rebounding. He was at the top at that list. So I thought that was pretty cool by Xavier McDaniel, and he was just a great player, man. I mean, this guy was storied in college, and then he moves on to the NBA, gets selected in the first round, pick number 4 by Seattle SuperSonics. And those teams were good, man. If you guys didn't watch the Sonic teams back in those days, they actually went to the Western Conference Finals where they would lose to the Lakers. But those teams, man, they gave them a lot of problems, man. Those Supersonic teams were good. They had Tom Chambers, they had X-Man, they had just a slew of good basketball players, man. And just that, and another guy that I didn't get to mention was Dale Ellis. If you guys don't know Dale Ellis, I'm gonna do a future episode on him. He was a marksman from 3, man. So those 3 were top 20, where they would put up 20 plus points in the seasons, and they were doing that on the regular, man. Those guys they kind of reminded me of Run TMC, because they had the top 23 point, they had 20-point scorers, 3 of them actually on the same team, and that's kind of unheard of now, So I thought that was a pretty dope feat. Xavier McDaniel goes on to win a title with Wichita State in 1981. He was the first person to lead the team in rebounding and scoring that season as well, before he declared the draft and would get drafted in the first round, pick number 4 by the Seattle SuperSonics. And if you guys don't remember those SuperSonic teams, they were good. They had Tom Chambers, they had Dale Ellis, and they actually took the Lakers to the Western Conference Finals, where they would ultimately lose. But the SuperSonic teams, man, they gave a lot of teams problems back then, especially in the Western Conference. They were at the top of the top as far as like powerhouses back then. So he goes on to start in his first rookie season, goes right into a starting role, and puts up 20 points per game. And he was actually voted second in balloting with Rookie of the Year, right next to the man I'm wearing right now, Patrick Ewing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And in the second year, the SuperSonics actually accelerated. They took off. They ended up playing the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. And Xavier McDaniel was on May 23rd in that game too, man. He was electric, man. He scored 42 points and pulled down 10 boards. And I remember that game because I was watching it with my friends and my family, and they had it on NBC. And he was just hooping, man. I mean, this guy was like doing everything, rebounding, boxing, like the way he was a masterman at getting those rebounds, man. To me, he was like rebounding levels like Dennis Rodman, man. I mean, this guy was just strong, built like an ox, had the heart of a lion. And he was great, man. It was just great watching X-Man do work on the boards and actually get in the paint and score baskets and his spin back, step backs, and it was just cool, man. It was something to see, man. I just thought I really genuinely enjoyed X-Man, in his tenure with the SuperSonics, and he was just accelerating them, and I just loved watching those. And going down, later in his career, the final 3 seasons where he spent with the SuperSonics, he was used more in a reserve role, but he was still putting up 20 points per game. And he actually made his first All-Star appearance in 1988. So that was pretty dope feat by X-Man. And he well deserved it, man, because he was playing that role well, man. And he was doing everything. That's the guy that you need to come off the bench. For him to make an All-Star team, I thought was a pretty cool accomplishment by X-Man. Unfortunately, his run with the Sonics will come to an end because he was having problems with teammates. And the thing with X-Man, and even in practice, he felt like his teammates weren't playing up to par. He would hold them accountable, and some teammates didn't like that. They thought he was overbearing, and he actually went to blows with Dale Ellis in practice at one point, where Ellis threw a telephone at him, and they ended up having to be separated. It was a pretty brutal fight, I heard. But he demanded a lot from his team, and like I said, I'll stick to this again, and you need guys like that on your team. Every team needs an X-Man, Xavier McDaniels, because he's the true leader of enforcer, and he's going to bring the best out of you. And unfortunately, he was dealt from the Sonics, and they moved on from him because of it. And they continuously came up short in the playoffs. It wasn't his fault, but they just continued. They didn't meet the expectations. They ended up moving on from him. And he was actually traded for Eddie Johnson and a couple of first-round picks to the Phoenix Suns, where he would start his new NBA venture. And he was ecstatic to be reunited with the Suns because he got reunited with his teammate Tom Chambers. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. He would end up being dealt to the New York Knicks for Jared Mustaf and Trent Tucker. And let me tell you something. That set the precedent for the Knicks because, to me, he was that missing piece that we needed because he was that enforcer that brought the best out of everybody. You talk about the battles that they had in practice with Charles Oakley, with Anthony Mason, the fights. He would just bring the best out of these players. He would bring the toughness out of them. And like I said, it carried on throughout his whole career, where I just talked about before, where he brings the best out of his teammates. And if you felt like you weren't giving it your all, trust me, X-Man would let you know. And X-Man was the prototypical, just the enforcer, man. This guy will go to war for him, for his teammates. And not only did he get into it with his teammates, he got into it with none other than Michael Jordan. And just ask Scottie Pippen, man. Scottie Pippen knows all about Xavier McDaniels because he gave that man hell. To me, that's why I said Xavier McDaniel was a missing piece, I think, for us to win a title. We ended up that year taking the Bulls to Game 7. If you guys don't remember those Knicks rosters, they were good, man. They had John Starks, they had Anthony Mason, they had Charles Oakley, they had Patrick Ewing, and they just had like a really good team. And, taking the greatest of all time in Game 7, unfortunately they fell short. But I remember X-Man diving for loose balls, hitting step backs, getting the Garden, electrifying the Garden crowd, diving for balls, getting into Scottie Pippen's face, getting into Horace Grant's face. And this is what he was known for because he did it to Michael Cooper when he was with Seattle. He got into it, obviously, with Wes Matthews and a slew of other players around the league because he didn't take no crap from nobody. And I always say that a good team, especially a team that's a title contending team, even to this day, needs a Xavier McDaniels, because he didn't take anything from anybody. That guy didn't back down from a challenge. He didn't back down from nobody. And that's one thing I always respected about X-Man. And we ended up losing to the Bulls in 7 games. But let me tell you something, man. In those playoff performances, man, he was good. He was crashing the boards. He was doing everything you needed him to do, man. I loved everything. He was a prototypical Pat Riley guy. This guy was physical, and Pat Riley loved players like that, so he fit the mold. He ended up averaging 18 and 7 in the playoffs, and him and Patrick Ewing still have a good relationship. And even though he was only played 1 year with the Knicks, he developed a really strong bond with Patrick Ewing. I thought it was dope because if you guys don't know, like Patrick Ewing he's my idol, and I love Patrick Ewing no matter what the fans put him through when he was here. I remember it, but just him and developing that relationship with X-Man was pretty cool, man. I love the Xavier McDaniels. I wish, man, if it wasn't for the contractual problems, and I feel like the Knicks kind of like shortchanged him a little bit, and he ended up, leaving and signing with Boston. But I feel like to this day, man, because I know what he did with Scottie Pippen, and Scottie Pippen was our nemesis. Not only was Jordan was, but Scottie Pippen was, and I feel like Xavier McDaniels gave him hell, man. I mean, he made things hard for Scottie, and I feel like if we would have held on to him, I feel like we would have won the title the following year, man. And I still stick to that. I even put it on my Twitter. Xavier McDaniel was the missing piece for the Knicks, and I feel like if we would have retained him and still held on to Mark Jackson, I feel like that team would have stood a little bit more patient and invested in Xavier McDaniels a little bit more. I feel like we would have won that title, and I stick to that. After the Knicks, basically lowballed him, he went and signed with the Celtics. He put up 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist a game. And he wasn't prototypically, from the president's words, he wasn't a fit, but he brought something that they definitely needed. And like I always say, you need a Xavier McDaniel. So I agree with him on that. Every team does, every good team, So through numerous contract issues, and he felt like the Knicks were blackballing him, which I feel like they were lowballing him. He ended up signing with the Celtics, and he ended up putting up 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist a game. While the vice president of the Celtics didn't think he was a perfect fit, but thought he brought something to the team that they desperately needed. So I agree with that, because I think Xavier McDaniels was a glue guy, and I feel like an enforcer. So you do need a Xavier McDaniels on the team because he does a little bit of everything. So I definitely agree with him. After his tenure ended with the Celtics in 3 seasons, he ended up signing with the EuroLeague and Greek club Heracles, and he ended up turning them into a March finalist in the EuroLeague and Greek Basketball League. And he ended up putting up 18.5 and 7 rebounds per game. He actually played for FIBA in the EuroLeague and put up 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. He goes on to finish his year out and then ends up signing with the New Jersey Nets. And when his tenure with the Nets came, he looked like a shell of himself. His numbers went drastically down, and he ended up calling it a career in 1998. As his career came to a close, he ended up finishing with totals of 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. And once he left the court, he ended up going back home to Columbia, South Carolina, to reunite with his family and be closer to his family. And he actually got his real estate license and has a passion for flipping homes. And he also owns a janitorial company back home in Columbia, South Carolina. So he was a man of the people on and off the court. And I love the guy. I love the way he played. And like I said, I'll say it to this day. I say it on my social media platforms. I give Xavier McDaniels his flowers all the time. We need to get that man in the Hall of Fame. So let's make it happen. I love him as a player. I think he should at least be, considered for it, because he's up there in the all-time, man. I think he's an all-time Sonic, and I still got him as an all-time Knick, even though he played 1 year, because if Patrick Ewing respects you, I respect you, and I'm glad I watched him, and I love this game to the T. And post-retirement, those basketball genes run in that family. His daughter Lena played for ACC with North Carolina. She actually won Freshman of the Year honors. And his wife coaches for Harrison Stowe University. And his son, Xavier McDaniel Jr., played for Rio Grande Valley University. And there's just a slew of basketball in that family. He's passed it on to those genes. And this is going to conclude episode 15 of Go School Retro NBA. Xavier McDaniels, X-Man, the Scottie Pippen stopper. That's right, I said it, the Scottie Pippen stopper. Now, I have to give this man his flowers, man. I really appreciate Xavier McDaniels and what he brought to the game, the enforcer. It was an honor for me to do this episode for him, and I hope he sees it. God bless him. God bless his family. And this is going to conclude Go School Retro NBA, episode 15. X-Man. One love. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at AriHoops84. Gold School Retro NBA is on Spotify, on YouTube. So don't forget to follow and subscribe there if you haven't. And thank you guys for tuning in, man. I appreciate you guys. One love.